Hello, my name is Eugene and to let you know a little bit about me, I can start with my name. Um, I think it's the only one in the world spelt that way. And to give you an idea about how that came to pass, I'm going to share my screen. I love maps, so we're gonna go to a map here. So yeah, here's a map of the United States. East Coast is over here, West Coast is over here to the left. And right now I'm in central Pennsylvania, which is right here. If I blow that up a little bit, right here is State College. So yeah, that's where I'm living now. But that's not where my dad is from. My dad is from southern Louisiana, in the Cajun French part of Louisiana, which is right here. So my dad was born down here. His last name is different from his brothers and sisters. It's different from his dad's, from his grandfather, and from his great grandfather. Somehow, every time in my line of the family that we got a new last name, it changed. And the one that my dad ended up with, it's the only one I think in the world. So if you look it up, you're going to find my dad, my mom, my brothers, and my sisters. Just an interesting fact about Louisiana. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina made landfall in the New Orleans area in August of 2005, and it made an absolute mess of the city of New Orleans. But my dad's little village here to the west of New Orleans was far enough away that it didn't get devastated. But a month later, another major hurricane made landfall, Hurricane Rita, right here on the border between Texas and Louisiana. And for that hurricane, it pushed water way inland from the coast, all the way up to the streets in the southern part of my dad's little village. But it didn't get into the village proper. And again, my dad's family and the house where he grew up in was okay. Well, my dad eventually wanted to go to graduate school, so he ended up traveling all the way to Pittsburgh, right up here to the University of Pittsburgh. And he started his graduate studies there at the University of Pittsburgh, met my mom, they got married. And during his PhD studies, his advisor moved all the way to New Mexico, to Las Cruces, to New Mexico State University. And that's where I was born when my dad was getting his PhD. And after my dad got his PhD, my older two siblings, myself, my dad took us all, we moved back to Pittsburgh, where my dad taught at Duquesne University for a little bit. Then my dad and my family, my mom, we relocated to Louisiana, just south of Shreveport. A little bit later to Alabama, between Montgomery and Atlanta here, right on the border here of Alabama and Georgia. And that's where I spent most of my years growing up. Went to Auburn University and got my undergraduate degree there. After getting my undergraduate degree, I went all the way up here to Providence, Rhode Island. So Rhode Island's a tiny state. I got to blow it up. It's right here in the very northeast of the United States. That's where I got my PhD. After that, looked for a job for about a year and then ended up here at the Pennsylvania State University here in State College. And that's where I've been ever since. So that's a little bit about who it is that I am, where I've lived, and the reason I got this crazy last name. All right, so now what do I do? So in my time at State College, I studied atmospheric radiation. And what is atmospheric radiation? Well, the sunshine comes in. And as the sunshine comes in, it goes all over the place. Well, I study that too. That's one thing I study. Also, the Earth's surface, the trees, the ground, buildings, it creates radiation too, just like the sunshine, but it creates radiation that we can't see. And that radiation leaves the surface and starts to go up through the atmosphere. I study that radiation too. But then the atmosphere itself creates radiation. The water vapor, carbon dioxide, or the ozone. These are molecules in our atmosphere that create radiation. Clouds also create radiation. Some of the radiation that the clouds and all these gas molecules create, it goes up to space and goes out of the Earth, and that's energy that the Earth loses. But some of that radiation that the atmosphere creates comes back down to the surface. And that's radiation now that we've got coming down to us. That's called the surface downwelling long wavy radiance. That's radiation that the Earth's atmosphere makes and comes back down to the surface. And I actually have been studying that with some colleagues of mine here in the Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science. So let me bring a map of that up. So here we go. So this actually is a map of the surface downwelling long wave radiance. It's the radiation coming down to the surface, but it's actually the trend in the amount of radiation coming down to the surface per decade over the last 4 decades. So this is a 40-year trend. And so I just want to focus. If we go to this map, this is where the trend has been the biggest. It's the yellow. That's 8 watts per meter squared per decade. And this is 4 decades. So if I multiply 8 watts per meter squared per decade times 4 decades, that leads to 32 watts per meter squared. And if we look at the map, the yellows, the oranges, the reds, the trends have been absolutely the biggest in the Arctic. And it's amazing. This trend right here, this yellow right here, just north of Siberia in the Arctic Ocean, the amount of radiation coming down to the surface from the atmosphere has gone up by 32 watts per meter squared over the past 4 decades. That's huge. That's a lot. And if we look across the whole Arctic, north of Alaska over here on the western side of the plot, all across the Arctic Ocean to north of Siberia, this is where we have the largest increases in the amount of radiation coming from the atmosphere down to the surface. And this is what we call Arctic amplification. Over the past 40 years, we put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and it's led to a sequence of events over the past 40 years that's really led to a huge amount of radiation coming down to the surface in the Arctic. And this is one of the reasons that the temperatures in the Arctic are going up really, really fast, really fast. Only a few places in the world have temperatures going up as fast as in the Arctic. And that's leading to a lot of changes in sea ice melt, ocean temperatures, and ice temperatures, and driving a lot of change in this area. So this is what I studied with some colleagues of mine. And with some of my colleagues, they have a hypothesis that one of the reasons that the energy coming down to the surface is so great in the Arctic is because of a change in the weather in the Western Pacific. So imagine that right over here in the Western Pacific Ocean, the weather is changing, and they think that it's leading to a sequence of events that's transporting more energy into the atmosphere over the Arctic, leading to more radiation coming down to the surface. So that's what I've been studying over the past two years. But during these studies, we found a lot of interesting changes over all of planet Earth. And so I would just like to find some people who would like to learn how to analyze these data sets. Got to know computers, got to know how to move data sets around, got to learn a programming language. And that's going to be part of the project if anybody is interested in this. And what we would do is we would investigate what's going on, not just in the Arctic, but everywhere at the surface across the whole world. We would just get a good idea about what's going on across planet Earth over the past 40 years using one of the best weather-related data sets that exist, which is the one that we were analyzing to produce this figure here. And yeah, we would look across planet Earth, but we would also look in the United States, the Mid-Atlantic region. We could even zoom in and just look at what the weather is doing at the surface where you live, where I live here in State College. And this would be a real learning exercise. And we'd be looking for interesting things, and we'd be summarizing what we find. And that would be the project. The benefits, data analysis. Data analysis is everywhere. in every human enterprise almost here in the 21st century. So these skill sets that you would learn would, boy, they would relate to analyzing science data, analyzing bank data, analyzing energy data, analyzing insurance data. Data is just everywhere. And got to be able to analyze data on a computer to get to all these data to bring value to all these organizations. So yeah, that's what my project would be about. So yeah, I don't know if I spoke too much or too little. That's a little bit about who it is that I am, kind of what I study, and what I could offer to people who are really interested in learning how to mangle data. So yeah, perhaps I'll get to see you on what are they when we do some more interactions coming down when the EnvironMentors organizers advance trying to figure out who's interested in what. But anyways, I hope it's evening here, so I hope you have a nice evening this Friday, October 7th, and perhaps I'll see some of you in the future. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.